afternoon. We're here today with Arkansas State Representative candidate Rodney Govens. And we're going to ask him a couple questions today, and if you guys want to ask questions, please chime in. Okay, Mr. Govens. So you are running for Arkansas State Representative District 44.
Yes.
Who's your opponent?
His name is Cameron Cooper.
And is he running under Republican?
Yes.
And you are running under Democrat?
Yes.
Okay. What areas do you cover?
So I cover Austin Ward, a little sliver of Cabot, a little part of White County, going over right off of 64 when you start heading north up Highway 5 to El Paso, all the way up to Rosebud, Romance, and a little section of Latona up in the northeast.
So doing a little research, we've seen that your opponent has been unopposed for quite some time.
Yeah, I am the first Democrat to run in District 44 in 7 years.
Okay, so what made you want to run?
When you look at the entire climate of the country, not to mention the climate of Arkansas, we're not represented correctly. And when I say we, I mean just the average hardworking Arkansan. You've got a legislator that's passing tax cuts for the wealthy and making us pay for it at the gas pump. You've got a legislator that is cutting the budget for the Department of Human Services and then turning around and not increasing the amount of social workers that's available to work with the foster kids. So just a couple of reasons why I can go on and on about why I'm running.
So what does your family values look like?
So I'm all about family values. As a former foster child, I understand the importance of family. I understand the importance of the family unit. But in the reality, in the real world that we live in, some of those kids aren't going to be exposed to that. So we need to fix that, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to take the Department of Human Services, and instead of slashing their budget, we need to increase their budget so that we can go ahead and not just get more social workers, but pay them a lot more as well, so that they'll stick around and they'll continue to do the job. Because as we've seen through trauma cases and through case studies, that kids that have consistency in their life, hence the family unit, are likely to be more successful and more apt to being a productive member of society than kids that constantly have to deal with change.
Okay. Well, give us a little bit of a background of where you come from. Are you from Arkansas originally?
I am not originally from Arkansas. I'm a transplant. I grew up in South Carolina. I was 13 years old. I was in group homes in the foster care system. I've just traveled throughout the entire world. Actually, I joined the military when I was 17. I did some time in Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. I got out the military and I've been in telecommunications ever since. And unfortunately, part of that means I'm going to be moving.
Right.
So this is the last stop. This is where me and my wife and kids decided to call home. We don't want to go anywhere else. We love it here in Arkansas. But being said, you can love a place and still want to see some good come out and some change come.
Right, I can understand that. So I noticed that you mentioned that you were a veteran.
Yes.
And there have been a lot of issues in the news concerning veterans and their care, as well as their pay. Can you speak a little bit about what veterans go through?
Yes, so as an active duty soldier, as an enlisted soldier, I saw the pitfalls and the downfalls from a financial perspective on the hits that the family unit had to take. When you're talking about an E2, just a private second class in the United States Army coming in is going to be making wages about $3,000 a year below the poverty line. And we expect him to be able to support a family, simply because you're giving somebody room and board. And I've lived in some barracks where I wish I got some substandard living allowance like the Air Force guys did, right?
Right.
That's not really a benefit all the time. And it's terrible when you start thinking about it like, well, the food's paid for, the room and board's paid for and all that, but that still doesn't take care of the family unit. If this guy wants to go and get a wife, if he wants to start a family because he wants a career in the United States military, he shouldn't have to wait until he makes a certain rank to do that. He should be able to jump right in. He's putting his life on the line for our freedom. Right. The least we can do is make sure that he has a livable wage.
Gotcha. So another big thing is your area is rather small, but some of the issues that citizens could be concerned about would be the roads. What would you do to make sure that they change that to make the roads a lot better for the citizens in your area?
So I think that even though the responsibility falls on the quorum court in most cases, and you're talking about the county judges and the justice of the peace, as a state legislator, you have power to submit legislation to go ahead and subsidize those projects, to go ahead and take money from the Department of Transportation budget at the state level and go ahead and divvy that over to the counties in what we can call grants, or we can call special programs, right? So take, for example, the Austin Ward area. Ward water has been pretty, I would say, challenged in understanding exactly how the water flows. And there's many roads, especially in some of these newer subdivisions, that are suffering. My neighborhood included in that. Well, what if we just at the state level took a $10 million grant and we gave that not just to Lonoke County, but split it between Lonoke County, White County, and Faulkner County, and now all of a sudden we can see not just the main roads get fixed like Highway 5, Highway 64, but also the tributary roads like Highway 236, like Highway 319. And that would go ahead and increase, that would go ahead and put a lot of people at ease when it comes to the actual road maintenance. Mentality wise, people would be more apt to travel.
Okay, that sounds really good. So with everything that has been going on with COVID-19, it has put a strain on a lot of citizens. I'm sure you probably had to suffer through some of the issues with your campaign. What do you think is a good decision, or what's the next step in helping our citizens who may be out of work, and the small businesses that would be in your community? What can we do, or what can you do, being a representative for that particular area, to make sure that they don't worry about where their next meal or paying their bills?
You got to demand, as a state legislator, you have to take a step and start demanding things for your constituency. And this is not a partisan issue. This is a real life issue. We have businesses that are closing in Austin and Ward right now. We've got businesses in Rosebud and Romance that are suffering, that are shuttering, that are closing their doors permanently because they can't come back from this. And I'm sitting here watching a state legislator not demand that the governor and the lieutenant governor and the attorney general work with them to go ahead and release funds. You can't tell me that the money's not there. We pay taxes, and we pay way too much in taxes. About 46% of the average Arkansans' paychecks go to some kind of tax, whether that's property tax, state tax, sales tax, something. We have to go ahead and make the tax dollars work for us. And if that means keeping us afloat until we get a vaccine, until the science can catch this thing up, that's what we have to do. We cannot continue to allow people to just suffer. Small business owners are the backbone of this country and the backbone of Arkansas, and definitely the backbone of District 44. And it's time that we go ahead and start working for them.
Speaking of taxes, we now have children out of school and they're doing a lot of virtual learning. What could we do to make virtual learning now the standard as it seems for the next couple of years? What could we do to make it better and allow the children to have access to all of the new virtual information that they need, and books and technology, and to make sure that it runs smoothly?
So part of that is rural broadband expansion. So a lot of the areas in District 44 are rural. Yes, we have about 24,000 people that live in the city of Cabot. However, the part that actually sits in District 44 doesn't cover anywhere near that population. Austin and Ward are booming and they're coming up, but at the same time, their broadband options are limited. And that's the better areas. When you start talking about El Paso, Romance, Rosebud, you're talking about incumbent local exchange carriers that have been there forever that aren't making the investment. They're just collecting the check. And they're not making any speed offerings higher. They're not offering actual true broadband by FCC definition of 3 by 25. Instead, what they're doing is they're collecting that money, they're increasing their profit margin, making sure their stock price inflates. We're watching it on the New York Stock Exchange, but guess what? It's hard for me to continue to keep up with that when I'm on dial-up, when I'm on 56K, and I'm sitting there listening to that do modem, right? So what I would like to see is more of what the state's kind of doing right now. Thanks to the federal legislation that the House of Representatives passed, we have a huge fund that was given out in March called the CARES Act. And a part of the CARES Act wasn't just the $1,200 stimulus check that some people got, but it was also a rural broadband expansion fund. And the state of Arkansas went ahead and offered $19.4 million to various companies that wanted to go into these places and expand that broadband. Not a lot of companies took up on it. Now, I do work for a company, and they did take up on that, and we're going to go ahead and expand broadband in Humnoke, Arkansas, Lonoke, Arkansas, England, Arkansas, all the way down through Coy, Arkansas, which population is about 14 people. And we're going to make sure that these people not only have the broadband speeds available and the access, but we're going to make sure that they get it for a very affordable price, which is the second part of this.
Right.
If you're going to go ahead and offer somebody broadband services but charge them an arm and a leg, that doesn't help the kid that needs to get online. And it doesn't help the parent that might be out of work right now. They might be laid off or furloughed. They might not be able to afford this. So we got to make it affordable. So I'm proud to partner with a company to make sure that that part is also taken care of, the affordability and the accessibility. The more broadband you have, the more resources you have at your disposal, and the more apt you are to become a productive member of society.
With the organization that you currently work with and your background, what inspires you?
Inspiration comes in all sorts of forms, right? But as a former foster kid, as somebody who knows what it's like growing up in a group home, scrapping for resources, I really want to do this for kids. I really want to make sure that kids are taken care of, because we can all scream about how we love kids, but when it comes to the voting records of some of these legislators, they don't. They want to go ahead and forget about the foster kids. Once the kids in the foster care system, completely forgotten. And I don't want those kids to be forgotten anymore. So I'm here to not just represent the people of District 44, but to represent the kids' best interests. I do that already with court-appointed special advocates for Lonoke County.
That's great. Also, we'll step in to see if we have any questions for just a moment. So, do we have any questions from our viewers? Any questions? If you guys have any questions, please submit them now and we can ask.
They come and give me a second.
Okay, so we'll just continue until we get some questions in.
Right.
So,
Somebody said run for governor.
run for governor. That would be great.
Anyone has any questions?
He's Democrat, Sandy.
I am a proud Democrat. That's right.
Someone said they need you. Teresa said.
So a lot of people like what you're saying. So we're going to just continue on with our conversation. So, the climate of today. We have had a lot of protests. We've had a lot of awful things happen and within our community, even within Little Rock, Arkansas. But we also have what's going on in Portland. We have what's going on in Louisville, Kentucky. What do you think is the turnaround to change the ideas in order for us to get back to a peaceful state?
So that is a very complex issue when you start talking about law enforcement and criminal justice. However, I think there's a couple of steps that we take. Number one, first and foremost, and I hope everybody can understand where I'm coming from when I say this, police officers have a tough job, and they do it for very little money. For example, in Lonoke County, the sheriff's department starts their deputies off at around somewhere around $27,000, $28,000 a year, right? And of course, any kind of degrees or anything like that that they might be able to bring to the table may increase that amount. However, $27,000 a year, even $32,000 a year, to put a gun on your waist, to put a bulletproof vest on, which, by the way, in some counties in Arkansas, they're required to purchase your own personal protective equipment. But when you go ahead and you put this weapon on your side and you go ahead and put this bulletproof vest on and you're going to protect yourself at a traffic stop that may be your last traffic stop, and you're doing it with the mindset of, how am I going to pay the mortgage next month? That is a stressful situation to put anyone in, much less a police officer, and it's not fair. Now, there's also training opportunities that we can offer police officers, but a lot of departments want to complain about how broke they are. Meanwhile, I turn around and I look on the news, and the Bryant Police Department pretty much got a tank. They've got what we call an MRAP, a mine-resistant vehicle. Now, I fought terrorism. I fought insurgency in Iraq. I know what it looks like. Last time I went to Bryant, I didn't see that. Saw some people get kind of crazy at Walmart.
Yeah.
But I did not see anybody that was posing so much of a threat that you've got to get up armored vehicles. Now, I know that the war on drugs is big, and in Lonoke County, we definitely feel it, especially partnering with White County and the BB Police Department. I see our sheriff and I see our local law enforcement battling drugs. But you're asking them to battle drugs and not provide them with the resources to be successful, because a tank ain't gonna make them successful. But an actual bulletproof vest that you issue can save their life. The proper training and engaging with people from a social perspective can actually de-escalate situations before they turn violent, so that we don't have a Kenosha, Wisconsin on our hands, so that nobody ever has to see a video of George Floyd having a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It goes into not just paying police more, that's not gonna fix it. The training's not just going to fix it, but we have to change the entire culture and the entire mentality around it, and that's the start.
There was an interview I watched on Dick Gregory, and he was saying that the way to make police officers stop doing the killings is to make them responsible, almost like having police officers insured.
And qualified immunity. And qualified immunity, when I was in Iraq, we had something called the rules of engagement. And if you violated the rules of engagement, you were subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I can tell based on some of the officers' actions, especially watching George Floyd, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor's situation. Some of them guys don't know what an ROE is, and it shows. And we have to bring that kind of mentality into law enforcement. It's a lot of responsibility to bear. It is. Being a police officer is hard work. Compensate my guys and hold them accountable. If you make a mistake, it is okay. But if you make a mistake and it results in the killing of somebody, the murder of someone, you can't just walk away and say, hey, administrative leave and call it a day.
So I'm going to just touch on an officer that is in my community by the name of Tommy Norman. Are you familiar with Officer Norman?
I am not.
So he's an officer out of North Little Rock, and he engages with the citizens of that community. I think the way that he engages with everyone makes them comfortable, because a lot of citizens don't see that engagement between police and citizen. What do you think in your community you could do to help the police engage with the citizens in a positive atmosphere?
So I honestly believe the Black Lives Matter march that Cabot had was a huge positive step. Not all police officers are bad. Nobody can ever try to convince me otherwise. But there are a few bad apples everywhere, and that's with anything. With any classroom, you're going to have a few bad students. With any military organization, you're going to have a few bad soldiers. You've got to go ahead and be able to identify and isolate them. Now, community engagement can go ahead and help you with that too. Maybe there's a reason why some officers aren't as well liked as other officers, and maybe it's because they do their job a little tougher, or maybe it's because they're one of those bad apples. But community engagement is a huge thing, and I think one of the big things is just hosting more events where the community can come and hang out with the police officers and see that they're just average guys, or for the police officers to go not just to the same gym, right, but also go to other areas. Take a day and just go to CrossFit for a day, right? Like, let's go to this CrossFit gym. Let's go introduce ourselves. Let's go ahead and just expand ourselves out there from a law enforcement perspective, and the community will go ahead and embrace that.
Okay. So what I want you to do is tell our viewers where they can find you.
So you can find me on Facebook. I've got a campaign page, Rodney for 44. That's pretty much the hashtag. That's the title. You can find me on Twitter. I don't really tweet too often, but you can follow me on Twitter. It's Rodney for 44 there. And then I've got an Instagram, Rodney for 44 as well. Just kind of converted that over. You can find me on any social media. I also include my campaign phone number, which is active. It is live. It's 803-386-8179. You can text me any questions. You can give me a phone call. I may not be able to answer because I do have a full-time job as well. I don't know why I'm asking for such punishment, but I am. But you can go and text me. You can leave me a voicemail, and I will return your call as soon as I possibly can, or I will go ahead and respond to your text as soon as I possibly can.
If there was one quote as we're ending that you would say to the people of District 44, what would it be?
That's powerful. That's put me on the spot here. I would say a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I would say that, and it goes into not just the criminal justice aspect of that quote, but it's an injustice that Arkansans that are hardworking blue collar have to pay for a gas tax at the pump that was implemented because of lost revenue from a tax cut for the wealthiest Arkansans. That's an injustice. It's an injustice that we're sitting here watching school choice turn into school segregation. It's a tragedy that we're sitting here talking about, and it's an injustice that we're talking about teachers on average in Arkansas making $30,000 a year. I'm looking at police officers and sheriff's departments that are starting off. I know North Little Rock, a buddy of mine used to work there, Officer Michael Bowen, and their starting rate was $37,000 a year with a bachelor's degree. Now, I couldn't imagine trying to pay off student debt and you're only making $37,000 a year. So you've got all these injustices throughout the entire community. And then the biggest injustice of all is that our kids were failing them. So a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
All right, well, you guys heard it here. Still submit your questions. We can get them over to him, but be out at the polls to vote for Rodney Govens for District 44 Arkansas State Representative. See you later.